Hey, what's good? So if you couldn't tell from my channel, I really love animation. It's one of my favorite mediums in storytelling, and I just really like doing it, both stop motion and especially 2D animation, at least most of the time. See, if you've ever animated anything before, you know it's a long and tedious process, and you might be thinking to yourself, damn, he probably hates having to draw those frames and stuff, but nah, not really. Or you might think I hate the line art process, which, yeah, I kinda do, not gonna lie, but that's not the main thing. Nah, the main thing I don't like about animating is something y'all are probably gonna find a little bit controversial. Because low-key, I hate digital art, man. See, I know y'all are probably behind your screens right now ready to jump my ass, but just hear me out, alright? See, I've been drawing since before I can remember, right? And I draw on basically every single paper I could get my hands on. My notebooks, my tests, magazines, anything like that. I kinda just stuck to drawing on paper until I was about, I'd say like 10 years old. There was this time when I borrowed my grandfather's iPad and I tried drawing digitally for like the first time. And I hated it, man. See, there were two problems. One, I wasn't used to drawing with my finger, and two, the screen was just like way too smooth, if you know what I mean. Like, paper has a certain texture that makes the drawing feel way more natural to me. I don't know how to explain it. Not to mention, I sketch in a very rough style, and it feels way better to do on paper. And I low-key feel that way to this day. I don't know, man, there's something about the grit and the feeling of a pencil and paper that just can't be replicated on a screen. But there's just so many advantages to using digital art software, so I just kinda got, used to it. So I don't actually hate digital art, it's just that traditional drawing always felt more natural to me. I think y'all can see where I'm going with this. Months ago when I was working on my Boondocks Reanimated video, which you should totally watch after this by the way, I was thinking to myself, damn, this screen is getting kind of annoying. I wish I could like animate on paper instead. And then I realized, yeah, why don't I just animate on paper? So this video is going to be going over my process of animating traditionally for the first time. So in traditional animation, there's a couple things you're gonna need, and most of those things I just don't have. Firstly, we're gonna need a pencil, which I got, but the next thing we need is a peg bar. In animation, peg bar is a tool used to keep the papers in place while you're drawing. If you look at the picture, you can see 2 round pegs and 1 square peg, which means that the paper used to mount onto the pegboard has to be specially made. It's typically called animation paper. Now I could go and try to buy some, but after looking at some of these prices, yeah, I'm good off that. And that's not even all we need. The last thing we need is a light box. A light box is basically just a pad you can plug in that shines light. This is used to see the previous paper or frame when drawing. Now these aren't as expensive, but I still low-key don't want to buy one. Not because I'm broke or anything like that. So I'm gonna come up with a few alternatives in case you guys want to try animating traditionally too, but just don't have the supplies. For the pegboard, I got a simple solution. You can use these folders, usually used for line paper. I don't know what they're specifically called, but you can probably find them at like Walmart or the dollar store for like a couple bucks. For the paper, you can use either line paper because it already comes with the holes, or you can use a hole puncher and use blank paper instead, which is what I did. Now for the light box, I got a couple different suggestions. If you have an iPad or a tablet or anything like that, you can always set it to a blank white screen and use that. I was going to, but the reason I didn't is because my iPad heats up like crazy when it's on for a long time. And after a while, the iPad will turn off automatically when it's left on, and it gets kind of annoying sometimes. So instead I used this small glass table, and I took some lamps and started shining them underneath. This way I have a good light source and a good workspace to draw on. Alright, so now that I got the table set up, all I gotta do is tape my folder to the table so it stays secure and place my paper. And now we have our workspace. Okay, so for the actual animation, I want to do something simple, so I decided to animate a guy raising his hand. If you watch my How I Animate video, you'll know how I start my workflow. We start with drawing each of our keyframes, and then I add our breakdowns and in-betweens later. When I started to draw my keyframes, I realized the first big difference in animating traditionally compared to animating digitally. See, most animation software have a tool called onion skinning, where it shows a transparent version of your previous frame so you can keep your next frame consistent. Obviously that tool is not going to exist on paper, which is where the lamps come in. Shining a light underneath the paper allows us to see the papers underneath it, allowing us to reference it when drawing our next frames. Alright, so now that we got all our keyframes done, we can add our breakdowns and in-betweens. I pretty much had a good idea of what I wanted the timing to be like in my head, so I did all the breakdowns and all that in between the first 2 keyframes all in one go and continued on that way. This is where I encountered the second big difference between traditional and digital animation. there's no playback. A huge advantage of digital animation is the fact that there's a timeline that you can use to scrub through your previous frames and play your animation while you work on it to see if the spacing or the timing is off. The thing is, in traditional animation, you kinda can't play your animation without taking a picture of each frame and editing it all together. So I kinda just had to rely on my instincts for a lot of this process. Around halfway through, I kinda got impatient and took pictures of all the frames I had so far to play it back. Now to actually make it a video, I used Stop Motion Studio. It's a free app and it's definitely the easiest way to play your paper animations. So I set up my phone above the table and took pictures of all the papers. And once I timed each frame for how long I wanted to, it looked like this. This looks decent so far, and an advantage I had to doing this is that I could see that I want to add another breakdown around the halfway point with a smear frame. So once I added that, I got to work on the rest of the animation. If you're wondering how I did the breakdowns and in-betweens on paper, it's simple. Let's take the keyframes B and C and place them on the table. Once I do that, I place a blank paper on top of them. And once I do that, I can see the start pose and end poses through the paper. With that information, I can draw in between those two poses and add any additional frames. If you want a more in-depth explanation, you can watch my How I Animate video. I talk about it more there. When I was animating, having to flip the pages and remove them when I wanted to draw a different frame definitely added a lot of length to the process, but it also felt more natural than drawing on iPad in my opinion. One thing I did miss from digital animation was the selection tool. If you wanted to move the head a little more down, for example, I had to redraw the entire thing instead of just selecting it and adjusting it from there. As you can probably see, there's a lot of pros and cons to both workflows. After a while, I finished drawing my last frame. After that, I set my phone above the table and took pictures of each of the frames, adjusting the timing again in Stop Motion Studio. And after all that, we got our final animation. If I had to rate it, I'd give it a 7 out of 10. I'd say the sketchy style makes the animation look a little rough. I feel like some of the easing and consistency between frames could be a little bit better, but like for my first attempt at traditional animation, it ain't bad. Years ago, I actually tried animating on paper and it looks way worse. But that's kind of because I wasn't using light to see the previous frame for one, and two, I used a straight ahead method instead of pose to pose like I did here. And you can tell because he shrinks a lot by the end. I also did try to imitate animation cells a few months ago. You can see in this video here. The actual animation wasn't done on paper though. I did it digitally and then traced it on my iPad. So while it's not the best, it's definitely better than my last attempts. If you're into animation, I would definitely say that animating on paper is something you should at least try once in your life. This was definitely one of the first things I've actually enjoyed doing in a while. If you're asking if I prefer traditional over digital animation, I think I'd still say that digital is overall better. The convenience and tools of most digital software is way better in my opinion, but the traditional way of animating is something I definitely want to do more. Most of the industry, as far as I can understand, has moved on to more digital methods, but there's still some animators, mostly in Eastern animation studios like in Japan, that still use more traditional methods. I feel it's a pretty good way to kind of assess your skill in the principles of animation. Still, I kind of wish there was a way to animate digitally with the feeling of drawing on paper, but hey, it is what it is. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you for 4,000 subs. I appreciate y'all's support more than y'all will ever know. If you're new and you like this video, I'd appreciate if you subscribed and follow the IG. I got a few stuff there that I'm proud of. And yeah, I'm gonna catch y'all later. Bye.